258. Oh, it's not on YouTube. It's you'll find a 258, or page 258. As we were mentioning the matters pertaining to the haqiqah, you'll find that we utilize the word haqiqah in a proper way. You'll find that Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, rahimahullah, that the word haqiqah, which means reality, in light of what the Sufis described it as, is not the proper meaning of what agrees with the legislative shara' of what we mentioned. You'll find that he gave the proper definition of the word haqiqah. The proper meaning of the word al-haqiqah, as we mentioned, everyone, we said breaks down to those two categories. So that's basically where we stopped at last class. Stay close to it, just in case something might go wrong. But in regards to what we mentioned, the haqiqah of what agrees with the Kitab and Sunnah is what Shaykh al-Islam said. But it breaks down to those two categories as we mentioned. Number one, what did we say last class? The haqiqah kawniyah, the reality of what is connected with this world. And we said haqiqah al-kawniyah al-qadariyah al-muta'alliqah bi khalqihi wa mashi'atih. The differentiation between those two categories is of the utmost importance, as we said last class. As you'll find that life, everyone, a lot of affairs that takes place in front of us revolves around understanding those two categories. And if one doesn't comprehend them well, they could go astray. Because as a result of it, Shaytân will instill bad thoughts in the human mind about Allah. Because you'll find that there are a lot of people, they have animosity or they're hurt as it pertains to their Lord. Why does Allah allow this to happen to me? Why did Allah allow innocent babies to be killed? Why did Allah allow 5 million people to be killed? Why did Allah allow such and such child to be touched by their uncle? Why did Allah? These things happen in existence. We have to say it. Because you'll find that a lot of people, they embark upon being savages based upon the fact that they're hurt. They have an inner hurt with their Lord, subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why? Because you'll find that they come up short in understanding these two categories, as we mentioned. The affair, like we said, of the utmost importance is understanding these two categories. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows affairs to happen for a reason. And to understand the domination and power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to know that if He willed, it would not have happened. And that Allah is in control of the affairs. And if those matters, like we know and like we mentioned on so many occasions, if Allah willed, they would not have happened in the first place. And we know many examples of this, as I've mentioned this maybe 30 times. Allah lays down the foundation and in the haqq in His book. It's so many ayat. It's too many to be counted, too many to be enumerated. And I gave one ayat, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in His book. He said, وَلَوْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ مَقْتَتَلَ الَّذِينَ مِن بَعْدِهِمْ. Surah Al-Baqarah. Right, the ayah where Ayat al-Kursi is, right before it. مَقْتَتَلَ الَّذِينَ مِن بَعْدِهِمْ مِن بَعْدِ مَا جَاءَتْهُمُ الْبَيِّنَاتُ وَلَكِنْ اخْتَلَفُوا فَمِنْهُم مَّنْ آمَنَ وَمِنْهُم مَّن كَفَرَ وَلَوْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ مَقْتَتَلُوا وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ يَفْعَلُ مَا يُرِيدُ. That's one ayah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows His domination and power. And everything does not happen except by His will of what we perceive of good and evil. But when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as it ascribes to Him, it's all good. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in His book, and He mentions it twice to put emphasis on it, to say if He would have willed, this not would have happened. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, if Allah had willed, they would not have fought. They would not have fought one another. After the clear guidance came to them, but however they differed. So two affairs happen, fighting and differing. All of those matters we know are very evil. Of fighting one another and fights and disputes breaking out between parties and groups and families and people who were united at one time. and then they became disunited. Those are affairs of what we, of course, believe to be evil. Notice in the ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, if Allah had willed, it wouldn't have happened. مَقْتَتَلَ الَّذِينَ مِنْ بَعْدِهِمْ من بعد ما جاءتهم البينات ولكن اختلفوا. After the clear guidance came to them, so they knew better. So not only did they differ, but the clear guidance was given to them of knowing how they should be acting and knowing how to conduct properly. The blueprint was laid down and made clarified and clear to you. And they still fell into it. Similar to what we see today. Same thing. The clear guidance came. Then the affair of what happened, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it clear. They would not have fought after the clear guidance came to them, but they differed. Some from amongst them who believed, and some of them what? Who disbelieved. If Allah had willed, they would not fought one another. However, Allah does what He wants. We know the ayat Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in His book, لا يسأل عما يفعل وهم يسألون. Allah is not asked about what He does and what He lets happen. However, we will be asked. Those are the matters, everyone, you'll find that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows matters to happen in this existence for a reason. Whether we know the wisdom behind it or not, but we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows it to happen for a reason and for infinite wisdom. Those matters of good and evil, which are connected with the first category of what Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, rahimahullah, where he says in this line here, I think it's on 258 in the English version, or the translated English version. 259, excuse me, everyone. 250. I got it. Don't worry about it. I got it. Oh, you good? Yeah, I just hit the wire by accident. Sorry about that. In light of what Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah, rahimahullah, what he put in the line, if you look at it, it says the differentiation between, or the difference between the reality of this existence, what is predetermined, what is connected, what Allah created, and what He willed. As we mentioned, in light of that first category, good and evil has to happen, and Allah allows evil to happen for a reason, even though He subhanahu wa ta'ala hates it. But He allows it to happen for a reason. لِحِكْمَةٍ بَالِغَةٍ, for complete wisdom, يَعْلَمُهَا رَبُّنَا سُبْحَانَهُ وَتَعَالَى وَلَا نَعْلَمُهَا. Due to the fact that Allah knows, we don't know. But we know ultimately, due to the fact that Allah is complete in His attributes, in His domination, and in His power, and His strength, subhanahu, if Allah willed, none of these affairs would have happened. But He allows it to happen for reasons. Reasons in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows, and we do not know, even though Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us examples in certain aspects of the wisdoms of why He allows certain things to happen. For example, sicknesses. Sicknesses, we deem it as discomfort and evil. But we know that the good affairs that comes as a result of it is removal of sins, raising in levels in the hereafter. And in that aspect, if you want to go to the physical traits or benefits, we know that it also strengthens the immune system, even though that's not the reason why we mentioned that. But the affair of what is of ta'abbud, of worship, when a person becomes sick, if a person is patient, Allah gives them a tremendous reward. Or He remits from them sins, or raises them in levels in the hereafter, and allows them to attain great merits in the hereafter. So in that aspect of what we deem to be evil, with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, out of His infinite wisdom, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed great good to come as a result of it. And those is too many examples of what we believe is evil, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows it to happen for greater affairs and greater benefits to take place. So that's what we mentioned in regards to this first category, like we said. And you'll find that the majority of the khalq, due to the fact of their lack of knowledge of these two categories, either they will fall into bad thoughts about Allah, and they will have bad thoughts. How many people say, well, if God exists, then why do He allow this to happen? How many of we've heard this? So some of us have heard this from the kuffar. Some of us have heard this from children that were hurt. Some of them have heard this from teenagers. Some of us have heard it over and over again, and the majority of them you'll find are atheists, even though they believe in Allah. But if you was to really get to the bottom of what made them fall into it, you'll find, well, if God exists, why did my mom have to be killed and murdered when I was 5 years old? Ah, you was hurt. You're hurt. That's the reason. Not because you deny his existence. You don't understand these categories. That's the issue. The issue is the knowledge of what? The people don't understand the power and glory of Allah, how powerful He is. That's the issue. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He subhanahu has total power and domination over this existence, to the point, as we mentioned on so many occasions, if Allah had willed, nothing moves in this existence unless Allah allows it, even from our mere blinking of our eyes. If Allah willed, He will hold our eyesight still for us not to blink. Nothing takes place in this existence unless Allah wills it. That's how powerful He is, subhanahu, jalla thana'u. These are the matters that if everyone was to realize that they were taught properly and sat in classes to educate themselves, these type of ambiguities will be removed from themselves. And they will understand, and they will be able to resolve the issues and the problems they have of the hurt and the pain they feel towards their Lord subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you'll find, as we mentioned, these are the categories that one has to understand properly. So Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, rahimahullah, he says, وَلَا يُفَرِّقُ بَيْنَ الْحَقِيقَةِ الْكَوْنِيَّةِ. Oh, we didn't mention it. Let's keep going. So the first category again, he said حَقِيقَةَ كَوْنِيَّةِ. The reality of what takes place in this existence of good and what evil has to happen. Even though Allah wills it, and at the same time, He does not, that He subhanahu wa ta'ala hates it. But He allows it to happen for what? For wisdom. Good. Second category, Shaykh al-Islam continues to say, وَبَيْنَ الْحَقِيقَةِ الدِّينِيَّةِ الْأَمْرِيَّةِ الْمُتَعَلِّقَةِ بِرِضَاهُ وَمَحَبَّتِهِ ولا يفرق بين من يقوم بالحقيقة الدينية وموافقا لما أمر الله به على ألسن رسله عليهم الصلاة والسلام وبين من يقوم بوجده وذوقه غير معتبر ذلك بالكتاب والسنة كما أن لفظ الشريعة يتكلم به كثير من الناس ولا يفرق بين الشرع المنزل. And that's the affair we're going to speak about today. We got to hurry. So keep in mind, it's not just people who are hurt for the people of the non-Muslims. And you'll find, like we said, from a lot of the youth and from those who are atheists, like we said, also fall into this. Having bad thoughts about Allah, then as a result of their anger and hurt, they reject His existence. And in addition to that, the deviant sects that fell into it, and which we'll talk about on the second category. So then, the second category, Shaykh al-Islam, if you want to pray downstairs, you can, Shaykh. I was going to say so you could pray in peace. It's more quiet downstairs, so you can have more khushu'. So the second category says, وَلَا يُفَرِّقُ بَيْنَ مَنْ يَقُومُ بِالْحَقِيقَةِ الدِّينِيَّةِ. The second is, they don't differentiate between, or they do not separate between the one who carries out the reality of the religion, which agrees with Kitab and Sunnah, or what Allah commanded upon the tongues of His messengers, alayhimus salatu wassalam. And listen to this very closely. And those who carry out wujd, what they so-called believe is feelings, desires, love, or visions, or what they perceive to so-called be nice and pleasurable. Who is he speaking about here? He's talking about the Sufis, of what they so-called feel and what they carry out of so-called pleasantries within themselves, in visions, in dreams. And you know that their whole religion revolves around these matters of feelings, pleasures, and saying, oh, we just worship Allah based upon love. Everything is love. Love, 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 love. Except with Ahlul Sunnah, we hate them. But in actuality, it's all affairs that are what? It's all delusional. Those matters, as we'll mention within a minute. So let's just read with Shaykh al-Islam, stick to the line. So like we say, so the second category, you'll find that because of their misunderstanding, certain people, such as, who everyone? Those who carry out the religion, or the affairs connected with the religion, the affairs of what's commanded in the Kitab and Sunnah, of commands, prohibitions, and affairs of akhbar, of narrations of what taken place within the past, or what will take place in the future, or what the Messenger of Allah informed of the unseen. All of those matters revolve around one affair I want everyone to understand, like we mentioned. If you want to go, I was going to say go downstairs. All of those affairs revolve around one matter that I want everyone to understand, and that is free choice. The right to choose between doing what's right and doing what's wrong. There's no human being from amongst us except that when we wake up in the morning for Fajr, nobody is holding you back except yourself. You get up with your own choice. You make wudu with your own choice. You pray Fajr with your own choice. Or if you decide not to do it, that was by your own choice. If you stay away from the girlfriends, that's from your own choice. And if you do it, that's from your own choice. All those matters of the religion, from the commands of Allah or the commands of the Messenger of Allah, goes back to one point that I want everyone to realize, which is your right to choose, or your affair to choose that Allah has given every human being. You'll find that the people tasawwuf, they ignore that matter, especially people from the people tasawwuf who say that they reached the level of yaqeen. They reached the level of certainty. What they did in actuality, they ignored this category. Because if you believe you've reached the level that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has relieved you of the duties, which category did you reject here? From both categories that we just mentioned. Which one? The second. So you see how these two categories, how many of the khalq, you see Shaykh al-Islam's point here, that a lot of the creation fell into affairs pertaining to Allah in either deviation or bad thoughts or atheism or great deviation in that aspect of aqidah because of their misunderstanding of these two categories. Either they denied the first or they denied the second, or both of them together. The Sufis, when they say that they have reached a level of certainty, which one of the categories did they reject? The second, which is that the whole religion revolves around choice to choose of carrying out the commands of Allah and the commands of the Messenger of Allah and abstaining from the prohibitions of Allah and His Messenger, which goes back to what? Ikhtiyar, choosing. So if you want to say that the second category is connected of everything Allah loves, of course, which is what He commands and what He prohibits. All those matters Allah loves. Everything that He commanded in the Kitab and Sunnah, from the affairs of carrying out the obligations, abstaining from the forbidden matters, all of those matters go back to what again, everyone? Choice. To choose. And that you weren't forced. So in that actuality, with the commands that Allah has obliged upon the creation, those from the people tasawwuf reached the level where they rejected this category because they said that the commands have been removed from them. So now you're just relying on what, everyone? The first category. If Allah will, I will do such and such. If Allah will, I won't do such and such. That's absolute nonsense. Allah also had commanded in His book, and no one is an exception from the creation. Even the prophets and the messengers was not excused from obligations. Who are you to think that you're better than them, to think that you reached a level where the obligations have been removed from you? If you give one example, rather all the examples of the prophets and messengers, has any of them said that I've reached a level where I don't have to practice what Allah has made obliged upon me anymore? Not one. For that instance, you now to say that you're better than the prophets and messengers is absurd. To think that you reached a level where the practices of the religion have been totally removed from you, whereas that category, which is the second, you rejected it. So you see the intelligence of Shaykh al-Islam, where he's saying how the people of deviation for the people of tasawwuf fell into this. In addition to that, even the people of the qadr also fell into deviation in regards to these two categories. From the aspect of the Jabriyah, as we said last class, those who believe that the actions are forced upon them. Which two of these categories did they reject? The second. That is as if there's no free choice anymore. So why did Allah command? Why did He prohibit? Why did the Messenger of Allah command? Why did the Messenger of Allah prohibit? Because Allah knows that He put the instinct of what, everyone? Free choice within human beings. That's why they've been commanded, and that's why they've been prohibited. No one's forcing you. Allah has given you the affair to choose. But when you now believe in the aspect of what they call jabr, the aspect of being forced or falling into jabriya, which category did you fall into? Which category did you deny or reject? Which one? Number two. Number two. So Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, rahimahullah, he's mentioning this in his book here. And that's what you'll find. Let's read it again. He said they don't distinguish between those who carry out al-haqiqat al-diniyah, the reality in the religion, which agrees with what Allah commanded upon the tongues of His messengers, alayhi salatu wassalam, and those, and to differentiate between those who carry out wujd, like feelings of love. Like we said, that's from the so-called methodology of the people to tasawwuf. Everything's love, 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 love. So they worship Allah based upon love without any fear, which is absolute nonsense. So they say, oh, love, even though, like we mentioned, if you now was to put in front of them the people the sunnah, try to really practice it, they go against that qaida. No, we hate you. We hate you Wahhabis. So now that you're going against your love theory now, the love is gone. Anyway, it's a side point. But as far as the affair of wujd, even the affair of our aqidah is not correct to just worship Allah based upon love and that's it. There has to be what? Has to be fear. You have to have fear of Allah also. Can't worship Allah based upon we just love Allah. Everything's love. But what about fear of His punishment? Fear of His consequences? And those type of matters of which has been clearly established in the Kitab and the Sunnah. So that's what Shaykh al-Islam is mentioning here in the line. By the way, if someone can read to me how they translate it, anyone? Someone that would volunteer? May yatatawwa'. Oh,
many people speak under the guise of speaking about reality, yet do not differentiate between the universal reality of a decree, which is linked to His act of creation and will, and between the religious reality and command, which is linked to His pleasure and love.
You understand that, everyone? That part, we just explained it, right? Okay, let's keep going.
They do not differentiate between the one who established the religious reality in conformity to that which Allah ordered upon the tongue of His messenger, and between the one who lives by his spiritual
How did they translate it?
spiritual ecstasy.
Ecstasy? Spiritual ecstasy?
Yes.
That's how they translate it?
Yes.
Wujd, that's like a wujd and dhawq are Sufi terminologies, basically. And we'll talk about that in a minute. They're like terminologies the Sufis use, which they say spiritual ecstasies, which is like love, a feeling of love and of a feeling of desirable love within themselves. Like we said, from their methodology is what? Worshiping Allah upon love. That's it. No fear of Allah, which is incorrect. So based upon that, because we hurry up because I don't have that much time. He says they carry out that based upon wujd and dhawq and what they feel. And they say spiritual ecstasies. Like we said, those type of love, of feelings of love within themselves, or those dhawq, what I feel and what I deem to be what correct and what is acceptable with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and what is rejected. So based upon that, Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah rahimahullah is saying they do that without taking consideration of what is in the Kitab and Sunnah. What is in the Kitab and Sunnah. So basically we're trying to mention this. I'm going to keep reading. Let's just read this and finish the line up. It says, كما أن لفظ الشريعة يتكلم به كثير من الناس. He says, just as the word sharia. So now he's moving on to another point. Before we move on to that, I want to close this out so we can move on to the next point that he mentioned. So keep in mind the whole where does the time go? Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. So in that instance, as we mentioned, everyone, let's go back to the point pertaining to the word haqiqah. So again, let's put it in proper meaning, where, as we mentioned, the improper meaning is based upon the meaning of the Sufis. Where you'll find the word haqiqah means to arrive at a level where all the obligations have been removed, which is absurd. So basically, they reach the level of the devil. So in reality, what they accomplish is arriving at the devil. And that's basically what they had achieved. Shaykh al-Islam then came and clarified the proper meaning of the word haqiqah. If you wanted to use the word haqiqah, this is the proper meaning of what agrees with Kitab al-Sunnah. He said the haqiqah kawniyah and the haqiqah diniyah. Is it clear? I'll say it again. Haqiqah, again, what everyone? Haqiqah kawniyah, qadariyah, connected with what? Allah's creation and His will. And the haqiqah diniyah, the reality within Allah's religion. Within Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's religion, which agrees with what He commanded and what He prohibited, and likewise His Messenger, alayhi salatu wassalam. Then you'll find that we mentioned, he also clarified the groups that fell into this or went against these categories, and we gave examples of it. So if you wanted to write down, for example, the non-Muslims, the kuffar. Also, from the Muslims who fell into this of having bad thoughts about Allah. And we know bad thoughts about Allah has become widespread, based upon the fact of ignorance and not realizing why Allah allows certain things to happen, and the realization of Allah's power and domination, that nothing moves in this existence unless Allah wills it. Even to the point when human beings blink their eyes, none of those matters take place except Allah allows it to happen. In addition to that, from the deviant sects, and we said the Muslims, if we can also mention from the deviant sects, from them, the people tasawwuf. If their bid'ah hadn't taken them out the fold of Islam, because some of the people tasawwuf believe that there's prophets and messengers after the Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, especially the affairs of the Deobandiyah and what they believe, which is mukaffirah, removes them from the fold of Islam, and affairs pertaining to the affairs of Qadariyah, for the people of the Qadr, where they believe that the actions have been forced upon the human being. Whereas they did not, which category again? Something's forced. That means you had no choice. So which category? The second. Shar'iyah, ahsant. The second category. So now, like we mentioned, it's incumbent upon one to realize those two categories are very important. There's other deviant sects that fell into this matter too. From them is the Mu'tazila. If I had more time, I would give the example of what happened. And I mentioned this benefit. We mentioned this a couple of times, or I mentioned this benefit a couple of times in other classes, of what happened with Abdur-Jabbar al-Mu'tazili when he entered upon Abu Ishaq al-Isfarayini. That athar. I'll mention that later. But you'll find that he didn't believe from the Mu'tazili that Allah allows evil to happen. He didn't believe that. And you'll find that he used a statement that if you didn't understand proper aqidah, he will be able to confuse you. For example, he came upon Abu-Razzaaq al-Isfarayini. He said to him, Subhana alladhi tanazzaha an al-fahsha. He said, glory be to the one who's glorified upon fahsha, evil. That sounds correct. So a human being will hear that and they'll be like, that's absolutely 100% correct, which it is. Glory be to the one who's high above fahsha, above evil and abominable acts and abominations. So he said a kalimatul haq, he said a word of truth. But what he's intended by it was batil. What he's intended by it was falsehood. He was basically saying that I don't believe Allah allows evil to happen. I don't believe it. That's incorrect. Then Abu-Razzaaq al-Isfarayini said, Subhana alladhi la yahduthu fi mulkihi illa bima sha. He said, glory be to the one that does not allow anything to happen in his existence unless he wills it. Whether it be good or whether it be what? So you see the insight of the people of knowledge. Someone that from us, from the common folk or whoever, would have heard that statement that the Mu'tazila said, and he would have followed them and went astray. Because that is a correct statement outwardly, until you know what was the actual intent behind it. You understand, everyone? That's the dangers of the people of bid'ah in regards to them saying kalimat al-haq, statements of truth. But when you investigate, really scrutinize what was intended by it, there was some other ulterior motive behind it that goes against Kitab and Sunnah. So that's the matter that we wanted to bring in regards to that. And let's return back to the book. I didn't want to. I apologize for going outside the topic. Let's go back to the book. So you'll find that he says, وَبَيْنَ مَنْ يَقُومُ بِوُجْدِهِ وَذَوْقِهِ غَيْرَ مُعْتَبِرِ ذَلِكَ بِالْكِتَابِ وَالسُّنَّةِ. Those who carry out wujd, like we said, those loving matters and what they taste, or meaning what they feel, not take in consideration the Kitab and Sunnah. So this last point we'll mention, and then we'll move on to the next. He said, هناك ما يعمل بذوقه وعقله. The great Imam Sheikh Salih Fawzan, Hafidhullah wa Ra'ah, what he mentioned about this category here, saying about what was the methodology of the people to tasawwuf. So he says, هناك ما يعمل بذوقه وعقله. They are from amongst the people who utilizes their so-called taste of what they feel and their intellect and what their selves are inclined towards, meaning what agrees with their desires and their whims. Like basically, I worship Allah based upon how I feel, which is similar exactly to the Christians. Based upon, if I feel it's right and I want to draw close to Allah by it, I do it. Even if it's wrong, I don't feel that way. So everything is based upon what? Feelings, emotions. That's exactly what the people of Tasawwuf do. I feel it within myself, so I'll do it. Not realizing the qawa'id al-shara', that we know that the origin in worship is what? Everything is prohibited. If we know from the usul of our religion, especially affairs of ibadah, al-asl fiha al-man', the origin in it is that everything's prohibited until there's a text that allows you to do it. So in this instance, and I'm going to read this point again and then we'll stop. The great Imam, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserve him, he says in regards to what the soul is inclined towards and what one feels, or what agrees with their whims, or agrees with their so-called intellect or rationality, he said this is misguidance, because it's obligatory upon one to always work in accordance to what Allah legislated, and to remove what they feelings dictate to themselves, and what their so-called desires or their whims, or what they so-called get lost in their so-called realm of love, and what they translate it as ecstasy, spiritual ecstasy. That's what the people of Tasawwuf utilize, these type of terms, spiritual ecstasy. Like it's just some type of a spiritual high of intimacy at the same time. So based upon that, you'll find that they said this is what? This is misguidance. Because a person's feelings and whims always has to be in accordance to what Allah legislated. As for mere dhawq, or spiritual ecstasy, or intellectual or rational affairs, لا دخل له في الأعمال الشرعية. In regards to those matters, it cannot enter in the legislated actions that Allah legislated. Your whims cannot dictate upon Allah of how you want to draw close to Him. Like I'm saying, this is how I feel, this is what I'm doing, oh Allah, accept it. Nonsense. And that's absurd. You'll find that he goes on to say, Hafidhullah, he says, فَلَوْ كَانَ الْعَقْلُ يَكْفِي لَمَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ الْكُتُبِ وَأَرْسَلَ الرُّسُلِ. And this is a point I want everyone to understand. He said, if the affairs was entrusted to the mind, or to rationality, and that suffice, why did Allah send down the books? And why did He send the prophets? And I want everyone to understand that point. That is very important. Because if the Muslims understood that point, they wouldn't be worshiping Allah, drawn close to Him upon affairs that angers Allah. And you'll find that that's what they do. Celebrating, for example, the celebration of the Mawlid, of the Prophet's birthday, drawing close to Allah about something that Allah did not legislate. They're affairs that make Allah angry. Based upon the fact that if the intellect in which you feel was enough, then Allah would not have sent the what? The books, nor would He sent the what? The prophets and the messengers. Because the whole mission of those two affairs is to teach you how to worship Allah properly. And to teach you affairs to draw close to Allah, how Allah loves it. Not based upon how you love it, but how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves it. Because that's the most important key factor in worship, that you're doing it in accordance to how Allah is pleased with it. Not you being pleased with it and then dictating upon Allah, you need to accept that. Because this is how I feel, and you need to accept it, oh Allah. Well, I felt it was right. Who are you to now come and have this type of affair where that's the height of arrogance? The whole mission of the prophets and the messengers and the revealment of the books and the finality of those books, which is the Quran, was to teach you how to what, everyone? Worship Allah properly in a manner of how Allah loves it. And if you understand that one point, you'll be able to now rid yourselves of all the different perverted ideologies and practices that a lot of the Muslims have fell into these days. So it said, if rationality and feelings suffice, Allah would not have sent down what again? The books and what? The messengers. We would have been left entrusted to our own what? Our own selves. So based upon that, I want everybody to put that or make that a point within their book and understand that. That's extremely important, that fact. He said, وَلَوْ وَكَلَهُمْ إِلَىٰ عُقُولِهِمْ فَالْعَقْلُ وَالذَّوْقُ وَكَوْنُ الْإِنسَانِ يَفْرَحُ بِهَذَا الشَّيْء أو يتلذذ به ليس ذلك دليلا على أن هذا الشيء مستحسن. He said, if they was entrusted to their minds and to their intellects, so feelings and whims and mind frame of how you feel, and a man or a person rejoicing with this thing or taking pleasure out of it, so-called, it is not an evidence that this thing is good. As we know, human beings can find something good, and in actuality it's disgusting. And in actuality it's uglified, vilified, it's disgusting. And they can detest something good for them, and then they what? They can say, oh, that doesn't suit me. If this was the affair we was entrusted to our desires. وَقَدْ يَكْرَهُ الصَّحِيحِ كَالطَّاعَ وَالْعَمَلُ الصَّالِحِ وَيُحِبُّ الشَّرِّ وَالْفُسُوقِ وَالْعِصْيَانِ. A person can now hate something correct, such as obedience, righteous actions. He can love evil, corruption, transgressing Allah's boundaries. And he can say to himself, well, I feel it's good. What's wrong with that? So that's the reason why, like we said, the mission of the prophets was to teach and put everything in proper perspective of affairs that agrees with Allah's religion. And now, like we mentioned, Allah loves it. فَمَا يَشْتَهِيهِ الْإِنسَانِ وَيَتَذَوَّقُهُ لَيْسَ دَلِيلًا عَلَى أَنَّهُ مُسْتَحْسَنٌ فَقَدْ يَسْتَحْسِنُ الْإِنسَانِ شَرًّا وَقَدْ يَكْرَهُ خَيْرًا. He said, from now, human beings, they can desire or find pleasure or what satisfies their whims. Those type of affairs is not an evidence that it's something good. Mankind can find something hasan, something good, and in actuality it's evil. And he can detest something good, and in actuality it's good and beneficial for them. And that's what Allah mentions in the Quran in Surah Al-Baqarah, ayah number what, everyone? 216, 216, where he says, وَعَسَىٰ أَن تَكْرَهُ شَيْئًا وَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ وَعَسَىٰ أَن تُحِبُّوا شَيْئًا وَهُوَ شَرٌ لَكُمْ وَاللَّهُ يَعْلَمُ وَأَنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. He said, perhaps you may detest a thing, and what Allah say in the Quran? It's good for you. And perhaps you love a thing, and was what? It's bad for you. It's evil for you. Allah knows, you don't know. Allah knows, you don't know. So again, this is the last point. فليس المقياس أن الإنسان يرتاح إلى هذا الشيء أو يميل إليه أو أن عقله يدله عليه. ليس هذا هو المقياس بل المقياس هو الشرع المطهر. Last point, he says, the measuring stick that mankind never is comfortable to what we just said, or these type of inclinations of their mind, their intellect, their whims, or getting lost within their desires, or what have you, or finding anything that agrees with that. Or that now we wait for our so-called rationality to indicate us or direct us towards it. That's not the measuring stick. The measuring stick is where ash-shar'u al-mutahhar, the pure legislated religion of the Kitab and Sunnah. That is what is the measuring stick, the miqyas. So based upon that, that's the point that we wanted to mention as far as the word again, haqiqah. Like we said, the word haqiqah in regards to the mustalahat Sufiya or shatahat Sufiya, in regards to the terminologies that the Sufis use, is rejected. But you'll find that Shaykh al-Islam now is clarifying the proper meaning of those words, haqiqah. Good. How long have we been talking for? No, with 50? Was 50? All right, we're give like, what, 5 more minutes? What 5 more minutes to do, we'll pray, inshallah. So let's keep going, everyone. So let's move to the next point. The next point, so Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah, rahimahullah, after he mentioned the word haqiqah in its usage and extracting the improper meaning and establishing what, everyone? The proper one. Now he moves on to the usage of the word what? Sharia. As you'll find that that is used either improper or they use it what is proper, the proper way to use it. And you'll find that there are people that don't know how to use it properly. They may take it out of its context in order for it to all revolve around mere one affair, which is jihad, as they say, which is not correct. When you say Sharia, you mean everything Kitab and Sunnah, from establishing the prayers, from Siyam, Hajj, Umrah, establish being good to your family, responsible, kind words, good dealings, not cheating, not stealing, to the end of it. Staying away from alcohol, all that Sharia. A lot of people, they use the word Sharia. What's the first thing that comes to their mind? Jihad. Incorrect. Sharia it's a comprehensive term for all those matters we just mentioned, in which you'll find that we'll mention what Shaykh al-Islam says in this line here. So let's keep mentioning it quickly. Then we'll stop. It says, كما أن لفظ الشريعة يتكلم به كثير من الناس لا يفرق بين الشرع المنزل من عند الله تعالى وهو الكتاب والسنة الذي بعث الله به رسوله صلوات الله وسلامه عليه فإن هذا الشرع ليس لأحد من الخلق الخروج عنه ولا يخرج عنه إلا كافر. He said, a lot of people these days talk about the word Sharia, and they do not distinguish between a Shar'ul Munazzal, the revealed Shar' or legislation from Allah Ta'ala, which is the book of Allah, in the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, in which Allah sent His Messenger ﷺ with. For verily this legislation, it is not for anyone to go outside of it, nor for anyone that goes outside of it except they're what? A disbeliever. The three categories, we'll mention them and then we'll stop. So write this down and then we'll give the details of it next week. So 3 categories that we'll mention, like we said, summarize, and the details we'll have to go into it a little bit more next class, so next Sunday, inshallah. So number 1 is the Shar' al-Munazzal. The first category is the revealed Shar', the revealed legislation, which is what Allah revealed in its meaning, in its reality, and what it indicates. Matter of fact, just let's put the word Shara' al-Munazzal, the Shara' in which Allah revealed. Just put that, and like we said, the details we'll give in next class. Then you have something called a Shara' al-Mubaddal, something that the people follow, which is a legislation that was altered. Not because Kitab al-Sunnah was altered, but the people follow something else by their own choice. Such as the deviant sects from the Batiniyah and Ismailiyah, from the different sects that fell into those perverted ideologies that went against the religion. So that's the second. And the third, they say ash-shar'ul mu'awwal, the legislation of what judges or people judge, meaning proper judges, of course, that are qualified, what they could fall into, which is far and few. We'll give the examples of it next class. And we talked about it, we touched on a little bit of this. We know, for example, how a person could come and decorate his case, and how a person could decorate truth to be what? Falsehood to be truth. Who does it every day, everyone? Lawyers. Lawyers come to court, and some of their jobs is to what, everyone? Dress up something wrong and make it what? Look like the truth. And certain people have talents and gifts to do that. And that's what the Messenger of Allah mentioned, the hadith that we'll mention next week, inshallah. Where he said that وَلَعَلَّكُمْ تَخْتَصِمُونَ إِلَيْهِ. He said, you will come to me in order to judge between a dispute. وَلَعَلَّ بَعْضُكُمْ أَلْحَنَ مِنْ بَعْضٍ. And maybe perhaps one of you are more eloquent in his presentation than his brother. And there was the person that the person that was brought for that case to argue. And how many people, like we mentioned, they do have a gift in order to articulate very well to the point where they could be 100% wrong, but they can sound so convincing to the point where a person will judge in accordance to what they said, even though they're wrong. And the Messenger of Allah warned against that. He said, for maybe I might judge for the person that was more articulate. Know for sure that I'm only judging an affair that will be a piece from the pit of the hellfire. And if one of you knows you're wrong, don't take it from your brother, even though the affair of the judge might be in what? Contrast to what the reality is. So that particular category is called Shara' Mu'awwal. Mu'awwal, meaning what was interpreted based upon what the judge had of evidences to work with. We'll talk about that more in detail next class, inshallah. So those are the three. Number one is what? Shara' Munazzal. Shara' what? Hold on for a second. Shara' Munazzal. Shara', what's the second? Mubaddal. Mubaddal. And Shara' what? Mu'awwal. Mu'awwal. Those are the three categories we'll touch on more in detail next class, based upon the word Sharia of how it's used. So the word Sharia, again, we'll speak more in detail next class. We'll stop. Any questions about the lesson, anyone? About the lesson? Was some إشكال؟ هل كان هناك بعض الإشكاليات نوضحها لكم؟ يعني ما هناك يعني استفسار وسؤال شيء أشكل عليكم، ربما كان هناك شيء غامض مر معكم أثناء الدرس وبإمكاننا أن نزيدكم إيضاحا فيه. يعني الأمر بأيديكم أنتم. There's something that was a little bit unclear.
Or the affair with the Mu'tazila, branch of the Sufis, right?
Not necessarily. The Mu'tazila were considered people of Ahl Kalam. They were people that were given, or they gave their intellect and rationality over the revelation. That's basically, to sum it up, just keep it easy. قدموا العقل على الوحي. They gave precedence to their intellect and their mind, glorifying the mind. The problem is, back in those times, they glorified and made their deity the intellect. That was their issue. So they give precedence to the intellect over the revelation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So as a result of it, they fell into a bunch of tammat. They fell into a bunch of catastrophic affairs, or a lot of what they call kawarith, or they call balaya. They fell into a lot of great low-level deviations as a result of it. So they was considered from ilm al-kalam, the ilm al-kalam, Mu'tazila. The majority of the people, the Mu'tazila of these days, their creed exists in this very moment. You know who has their creed? The Rawafid, the Shia, all of them. The Shia, the Rawafid have the Aqidah of I'tizal. Yes, the Rawafid, the Shia have the Aqidah of the Mu'tazila of this very day. So don't think it doesn't exist. It exists to this moment. Who has it? The Shia and the Rawafid. And if you want to call the Shia, all of them are Rawafid now. All of them are Rawafid. All of them. And like we mentioned, from the dangerous affairs is a lot of Muslims are being fooled because they're sending missiles to Israel. So they think they're the heroes of Islam. They're not. They've been killing millions and millions of Muslims for the past over 1,000 years. They probably killed 40 million Muslims. So now we're going to glorify them today because they shoot missiles at Israel? No, we're not. They're still our enemy. But we know that an ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَكَذَلِكَ نُوَلِّي بَعْضَ الظَّالِمِينَ بَعْضًا بِمَا كَانُوا يَكْسِبُونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there could be an oppressor. And he could be evil. And then Allah will take another oppressor who's more evil than him and allow that power to dominate over that oppressor. Does that make it now make the one that was more unjustful, more evil, good now? No, they're all evil. You understand? So just because that oppressor was given power over another oppressor doesn't mean that he's now what? Good. You understand? How else we're going to forget the history of the Shia? If you now go back to Minhaj al-Sunnah by Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah, he gives the history of the Shia. He gives so many events where the Shia betrayed the Muslims, and they were the main ones that opened up the door for the kuffar to come in and kill millions of Muslims. They were the reason. So we're just going to forget all of that. Just forget thousands of years of filth, betrayal, carnage, pillage, you name it. Forget it all. All because they're shooting bombs at Israel now? You understand, everyone? The key affair these days at times is knowledge. If you don't have proper knowledge, you will fall into so many different pitfalls and satanic traps. Now you'll start saying, as you hear some of the Muslims now, you hear them saying, oh, the Shia are our heroes. Did you just say that out of your mouth? Oh, the Rawafid are our heroes from Iran. Did you just say that out of your mouth? Did you read their history? Did you see the missiles that they shot over Saudi a couple of years ago? The missiles and the wars at the borders they've been shooting at the Muslims? You don't remember? You don't forget that? Did you remember that? You understand? So those are the matters you have to, like we said, study. They're not our friends just because Allah took an oppressor and then allowed him to be overpowered over who or another oppressor. It doesn't make both of them now or one of them what? Good. You understand, everyone? But it's basically the confirmation of the ayah where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in his book, likewise, an oppressor, there will be the day it will come where Allah will put a great oppressor on top of his neck. You understand? That's the ayah. It's the meaning of it. وَكَذَلِكَ نُوَلِّي بَعْضَ الظَّالِمِينَ بَعْضًا بِمَا كَانُوا يَكْسِبُونَ. Likewise, we paired up oppressors, linking them to one another. Where one might be an oppressor, then Allah, well, your day is going to come where Allah is going to allow another oppressor to be on your neck. Does that make him good now? The one that was hired that's being put on another person? No, they're all evil. But that's just the Sunnah of Allah in its existence in His creation. Is it clear? We'll stop here, inshallah. Any other questions about the lesson? طيب لعلنا نكتفي بهذا القدر وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم.